Snap Judgment Studios. Oh, you've waited long enough. At long last, get your marshmallow and graham crackers ready, light the coals, grab a cold drink, stoke the fire, because it's time for Campfire Tales, a summertime taste of paranormal from Snap's sister podcast, Spooked, to get you in the mood. And know this, the brand new season of Spooked, Season 7, returns to Luminary September 9th, and to unlock the newest spook stories fresh from the tomb and regularly through the spring of 2023. Subscribe to the Luminary channel on Apple Podcast or directly on Luminary. Luminary.link/spooked. That's Luminary.link/spooked. Attention shoppers, we now have taste in the bread aisle. Dave's Killer Bread, that's right. An organic bread that's no longer a sedative for your taste buds. Dave's Killer Bread is on a mission to make the most of the loaf, to rid the world of GMOs, high fructose corn syrup, and artificial ingredients, and plant the seeds of good in all that they bake. Killer taste, killer texture, always organic. Dave's Killer Bread. Bread amplified. Snap Judgment is brought to you by Progressive. Are you thinking about how to tighten up your budget these days? Drivers who save by switching to Progressive save over $700 on average, and customers can qualify for an average of 6 discounts when they sign up. A little off your rate each month goes a long way. Get a quote today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. National annual average insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2020 and May 2021. Potential savings will vary. Discounts vary and are not available in all states and situations. As a kid, my grandfather had a shotgun. He brought it out twice every year. Once, as the clock turned over on New Year's Eve, he'd run out to the porch and blast into the sky. Pow, 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 pow. Granddaddy, you said whatever goes up has got to come down. No, not on New Year's Day, baby. The other time was the night before Halloween. We're in Detroit. Thousands of fires erupted the moment the sun set over the horizon. The city's rage, blazing orange and red and gold. Devil's Night. And I watched Granddaddy get his gun, set up his folding chair on the porch, and sit smoking his cigarette, stroking the barrel. I get back up in the house now, baby. Take care of your grandmama. All around us, Detroit burns. And hiding behind the bars on our windows, looking out into the darkness past Granddaddy, I see shadows running on the sidewalk. Hooded figures wearing Batman, Superman, Donald Duck masks, carrying torches, gasoline containers, some pausing to consider our home, then hearing the cock of his gun barrel before deciding to move on. And if he's going to stay up to protect us, I'm going to stay up to protect him. All night long if I have to, and I try. Watching shadows, fires, police cars, I try. Then first light presses me awake. My face sleep mashed against the window. I jump up scared, open the front door, and see my granddaddy still sitting sentry on the porch, still holding his shotgun, pulling the dregs from his last cigarettes, his pack of super long menthol cools, empty. You keep your granny safe like I asked you? Yes, sir. Good boy. Granddaddy, weren't you scared? Then, for just an instant, his eyes flash hot. He looks at me like he's seeing something else. Someone else. I already paid the fire once, baby. I won't pay it again. Before he says it, I never knew how his sister had passed. I didn't understand that it wasn't an accident. I didn't know that someone had meant to burn his black family from their home in the middle of the night, and how every person that crawled out of that inferno long ago took something of the flame with them. I didn't understand that he's been battling a different fire for a very long time. Then the burn passes from his eyes and he's almost my grandfather again, and I need him back from that place he just went. Granddaddy, can I have just a little bit of ice cream up in my cornflakes? He looks at me all the way then. Baby, you can have a lot of ice cream in there if you don't tell your grandmama. Today on Snap Judgment, a very special tradition. We're taking you on a path through the dark woods. We proudly present Campfire Tales.
Part 1, Dismal Falls.
Featuring stories trapped beyond the veil from our sister show, Spooked, a Luminary original. On this spooked road, we know full well that things are never as they seem, that people are often fighting invisible battles against unseen forces. We know all of this. But still, there's a different type of magic to being in the wild that highlights the mystery of everything we do not see. And our next storyteller, Chuck. Chuck comes face to face with his unknown, deep in the Appalachian wilderness, at a place called Dismal Falls.
My name is Chuck. I've been hanging out in the woods since I was really young. Kind of been out there ever since. Between backpacking tours and wilderness therapy, ended up making it what I do for a living at this point. So this happened in 2015. It was summertime. And the camp that we were working out of, our main base camp, from what I understand, it was an old Christian summer camp. I'm not sure the details, but it was a pretty old camp. A lot of the cabins that we used had been kind of redone a little bit. And then, of course, we had the horse stables. And we had, I want to say, like, probably 15 or 16 of them. Older horses, a lot of them. And the horses were actually essentially in therapy as well. The kids would work with them for part of their therapy. And then the horses were also being rehabilitated from abusive homes at the same time. At night, you would hear down by the stables, the donkey. His name was Stanley. It was a mini donkey. And he would start going off at night down there. I don't know if anybody out there has ever heard a donkey freaking out, but it can be kind of weird, a little bit scary. But he would do that pretty consistently. And then usually the next day when we would go down to do horses, first thing we do is groom them. And when you go to groom them, their manes and tails would be just completely in knots. Even if we had brushed them the day before, the horses would be in poor shape. So at the time, I really didn't think a lot of it. But I would have kids going like, look at this. Like, I didn't do this. And I'd be like, okay, like, what's your point? And they'd be like, we were the last group here. Like, I didn't do this. And I'm like, well, maybe Miss Ann did it. You know, like, it's not part of my pay grade right now to worry about the horses' manes. I don't know a whole ton about horses, but I do remember growing up, my great grandma would talk about that happening, and she said it meant there was a witch on your farm. I guess it was because she would go out and every single day the manes and the tails on the livestock were tangled up. It was like somebody had gone out and just went haywire on these animals. And they'd be skittish, and they would be jumpy, and they just were not in a good mood at all. That was one of the few things she ever talked about, was she said, I swear there's a witch out here. And she'd say it all the time. From the first time it happened, down by the horse stables, I definitely thought of that. I remembered her saying that immediately. That damn witch. But I was like, well, if it happens a couple of times, whatever. It's not a big deal. And you're like, well, it's coyotes or something like that. But with how consistently it happened there, I did start to wonder a little bit about that. I'd heard about Dismal Falls. I'd read about it. I read about it initially on a photography website. And I saw pictures of it, and I was like, man, that's a beautiful waterfall. Like, I want to get out there and go see this. And I got linked over to a book called Land of Waterfalls. And this is by a guy named Jim Bob Tinsley. He wrote it in 88. And he wrote it about Transylvania County mainly, which is the land of waterfalls, as they call it. There's tons of waterfalls out there, charted, uncharted. There's some that don't even have names. And he describes it as one of the most foreboding places in the southern Appalachians. I was mainly reading to get directions. I just want to know how to get out there. Decided I was going to go check it out the next day. And so I drove up and I parked there at the base camp and started my hike up there. It's almost like a tunnel made out of rhododendron and mountain laurels that are so low to the ground that they're almost over your head. Very thick to get through. You're kind of on hands and knees. And that goes on for some time. Then you pop out of that and it opens up a little bit for you. And you're still going up a really steep grade. Pretty blind. You can't see a whole lot. And you come around this corner, and on your left side, there's this really large boulder. I mean, it's got to be the size of a house. It's a big boulder. So I took note of that and kept on moving. And not too long after that, you come to this point where the trail splits into two. At that point, I stopped and got my map out. I was not sure which way to go 100%. The lower route that stayed pretty flat, according to the map, would go to the Dismal Wall. But the other trail that goes, from where I was at, it looked like it went straight uphill. That's the one that goes to the waterfall. It is really steep. So I start the climb up that way. I get probably about halfway up it and just felt like I was being watched. I got that pit of your stomach feeling, and hair on the back of my neck kind of stood up. And weirdly enough, my nose actually started bleeding right then too. I kind of turned around to where this kind of sense was coming from, and all I could see was just this foot and part of a robe disappear into the rhododendron thicket.
What could be lurking in those bushes? Find out on Snap Judgment. The Campfire Tales episode continues. Stay tuned. Now, if you want more Spooked, if you need more Spooked, be afraid. Spooked Season 7 drops this September 9th. Brand new episodes arise from the ashes and will be released regularly through next spring. Available on the Luminary channel on Apple Podcasts or directly on Luminary at luminary.link/spooked. Welcome back to Snap Judgment, the Campfire Tales episode, featuring stories crafted in the dark of night from our sister podcast, Spooked, a Luminary original. Using Talkspace feels a little like having a mental health professional in your pocket. Talkspace offers both therapy and psychiatry, and being able to reach out to a provider anytime, anywhere, makes addressing mental health super easy, and getting started is the most important part. As a listener of this podcast, you'll get $100 off your first month with Talkspace. To match with a licensed therapist today, go to Talkspace.com. Make sure to use the code JUDGMENT to get $100 off your first month and show your support for the show. That's Judgment and Talkspace.com. When last we left, Chuck was deep into the woods on a hike when a strange figure appeared, then disappeared into the bush. Spooked.
Just caught a glimpse of it. At the time, I mean, we had been out the night before. I was dehydrated a little bit, kind of tired, and a little bit hungover, and so I was like, I'm definitely seeing things. Like, I should take a break. And I'm like, well, how is that possible? Because I didn't hear anything. And with how thick the leaf litter is there, you can hear anything. It was quiet. It's very quiet out there. So I'm thinking about all this, and it's getting me flustered. So I'm just like, all right, I'm going to keep going. Kept on moving, and eventually I got to the top of this hill that I've been climbing, and I crested over the top of it, and there's a tree there. The tree has got a rope coming down from it that goes to another tree, and that tree has a rope, and then from there it kind of puts you down in the rhododendron by the banks of Dismal Falls. It's just a big, long bridal veil. Really, really pretty waterfall. It drops 40 feet with a nice cascade, and then it hits down, and it just runs down this, I mean, it's got to be a couple 100 feet of just slick rock. So I hike in, go sit at the bottom of the falls. I sat down to just chill out, have some water, look at the falls. Water was nice and cool, so I'm enjoying that. I was chewing on some mint. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good. I'm not even stressing on the foot. Not too long after I got there and kind of had settled in, I get that feeling again, like I was being watched. And kind of as I have this feeling, I hear what sounded like a voice. So I turn and look, and up at the very top of the cascade, there's a woman standing on top of the waterfall. I could see her plain as day. She had kind of curly gray hair, about down to her shoulders. I would say she was in her 80s, and was wearing a cloak, a black one, or at least a dark colored one. It seemed to be in spectacular condition for somebody who runs around the woods in it, and that's about all I could make out from where I was. But no sooner had I looked at her, she turns and walks off into the rhododendron bushes, and then she's out of sight. At this point, I'm more confused and curious than scared. I'm 6'2" and I weigh like 240. I'm a big dude. Like, I'm not intimidated, but I'm trying to think like why somebody would be up there. I didn't even know you could go up there. So I decide, well, I'm going to go up there too. I'm going to go figure this out on my own. So I throw my stuff in my bag and start making my way up this slick rock next to the bridal veil. Now it took me close to an hour to navigate through all this slick rock. This stuff is pretty serious. It's kind of tough to navigate. And I'm trying to catch my breath, and then I hear from the bottom of the falls, this time it was definitely a voice. I heard it really clearly, and it just said, "Hey." And so I turn and look, and now she is at the bottom of the falls where I had just been. Now I'm trying to figure out how she would have gotten down there past me when I was coming up, because I couldn't find any other trails. Something's not right here. And I was like, this person's following me. What my brain and body said was, get out of there, dude. Like, we don't need to be here. Like, let's get out of here. Already had my pack on, so I just kind of stepped off of the bridal veil, and I just kind of went crashing through the bushes until I finally found the trail that I'd come in on. So I scramble up those rope assists, crest back over the ridge, and so now I'm heading back down. I mean, I'm trucking pretty hard downhill back toward that split in the trail where I saw the foot initially. So I blow past that point and I'm running pretty much full speed down this hill. And I come back to that point where the big boulder is, that big house-sized rock. And of course, now it's on my right side. And as I come around this blind corner around this rock, she's standing right there in the trail in front of me. And I almost ran smack into her. I took a tumble to avoid hitting her, hit the ground pretty hard. It winded me pretty good. When I came to a stop, I had basically rolled kind of up against this rock. So I'm rolled up against, my back's against the rock, and I'm kind of sitting up, and she is standing over top of me, just looking at me. No expression on her face at all, and her eyes were so light blue that they were almost white, like the irises. They almost blended right into the whites of her eyes. The rest of her was really old looking, but her eyes were very, very youthful looking, just piercing. Scared me to death. We stared at each other for a second. Felt like an eternity. Like time slowed down a little bit. I break eye contact with her, and kind of roll, get my feet under me, and I take off. And she just kind of watched me get my feet under me and go. Now I'm really running. I mean, I'm terrified at this point. The whole time I'm trying to tell myself, like, this is all, like, you're making this up. Like, there's nothing weird going on here, even though I'm in a dead sprint running from something. Finally get right about down closer to base camp and slowed down, checked behind me, stopped, didn't hear anything. I figured I was not being followed, and so I just continued my walk. I got to a point in the trail where there's this down tree, and I cross over this log, come around a corner, and there's a bobcat sitting in the middle of the trail. Ears were not moving, eyes were not moving, not a whisker flinched. And that's very out of character for that animal. I mean, I've been in the woods for a long time, over 15 years, and I've only ever seen one actual wild bobcat. You're lucky to ever see one, much less one sitting just in the trail looking at you. So I stop, and I'm staring at this cat, and I notice the eyes. They weren't like cat eyes. The pupils, they weren't slitted, wasn't the same shape. I mean, they were shaped like human eyes. The pupils were, I mean, almost dead white, like very, very light blue, almost dead white. So I knew right away, as soon as I saw that cat's eyes, I was like, oh, that's her right there. And I was terrified. I was looking this thing dead in its eyes, and it's kind of looking at me, and I felt it like deep down in my being that she could do whatever she wanted to me. I was at her mercy. So I started talking to her. I was like, look, you got a beautiful mountain here. I was like, well, I will never go back to your waterfall. Just please let me go. Like, just let me go. I didn't even speak that out loud. That was just something I thought. And no sooner had I thought that, this bobcat turned, walked off the trail, let me go. After that, it did take some time to process it, but really, that's when it all kind of clicked for me right there. It sunk in for me, and I was like, whoa, hold on a second. It's like, yeah, that was really, really weird. Like, I think I ran into a witch. I don't know, that's kind of just, it was very organic in the way that it just, like, my brain automatically was like, yep. So, I mean, an experience like that, it humbles you a lot. Especially in the position that I was in. I mean, you're a big bad guide. Like, I've punched a bear in the jaw. Like, I'm not intimidated by a lot of things, but sure enough, it humbled me a lot, because that was probably one of the one of the few times in my life where I felt like truly helpless when I was laying up against that wall looking at this, what seemed to be like an 80-year-old woman. This was an old witch, and I think she's been there for a long time. Longer than 80 years, I would think. I think she's much older than that. And I think that's where she lives. That's her stomping ground. And it's way out of the way for a reason. So, I mean, when I go out in the woods, like I'm picking up trash, I'm taking care of the woods. And I think she saw that. I think she was just kind of like letting me know that she was there, like she's making her presence known more than anything else. And yeah, really, that's what I got from it for the most part. Because like I said, I mean, she could have done whatever she wanted to while I was laid up against that rock wall. It sounds crazy, but I think she stopped me on that trail to judge my character. She decided for whatever reason not to harm me, and just to see if I was worthy enough to be in her woods. And I think she determined that I must have been.
Thank you, Chuck, for coming from those woods and bringing your story back with you. If you listeners decide to go exploring, please bring a friend. Original score was by Clay Xavier. It was produced by Greta Weber. Now, if you want more Spooked, if you need more Spooked, be afraid. Spooked Season 7 drops this September 9th. Brand new episodes arise from the ashes and will be released regularly through next spring. Available on the Luminary channel on Apple Podcasts or directly on Luminary at luminary.link/spooked. And please know that this is not the news. No way is this the news. In fact, you could go for a sunset hike to the top of a mountain with a dear friend together. You can enjoy the spectacle of shadow descending through the woods even while the full moon begins to rise. And at the dark bend, you can turn to your friend. Your friend now staring back at you with a particularly wolfy grin. Their ears suddenly larger, sharp incisors spouting out on either side of their mouth. And when they hungrily, greedily lunge towards you, know that you would still not be as far away from the news as this is. But this is PRX. If you run your own company, then you need Odoo. Odoo is an affordable, all-in-one management software built to increase the efficiency and productivity of any business, regardless of size, budget, or industry. With Odoo's massive library of fully integrated applications, you can control every aspect of your company from anywhere, at any time. So ditch that old, outdated software and get more done in less time with Odoo. For a free trial, go to odoo.com/snap. That's ODOO.com/snap. If you need more Spooked in your world, more creatures, more ghouls, more things that go bump in the night, know this. All new episodes of Spooked return to Luminary September 9th. And to get the newest Spooked stories as they're released and regularly through the spring of 2023, subscribe to the Luminary channel on Apple Podcast or directly on Luminary. That's luminary.link/spooked, luminary.link/spooked.